open discussion and Q&A on stuff that I've missed and maybe some tasks going forward. So we're here to talk about Meshtastic at Burning Man 2025. So just a little introduction on who I am. I'm Sasha, aka Mark, aka my Discord is Phoebe. I have to definitely drop a couple of those names as I understand that can be confusing. But I've been to 2 consecutive Burning Man events, and I've camped with Costume Cult both of those years. And I've been involved in the Meshtastic project since 2021. I recently became a contributor to the project. I'm a radio nerd, love radios, and I'm a terrible developer. I'm not a very good developer, but I'm great at I'm sort of giving feedback and also maybe doing a little bit of organization. So that's how I'm sort of trying to contribute to this project. So let's first talk about, because I know I see a lot of familiar faces here from people that we've worked on this project with before at the Burn and also online. But we'll just give like a brief overview of what it does and its applications at the Burn. So Meshtastic is an open communication platform that allows some basic communication functionality, even when there is no cell service, Wi-Fi, or internet or outside connectivity or infrastructure. So the basic types and the most straightforward types of communication that it provides is messaging, text messages using long-range, low-power radios, location sharing in that same vein, and all of this is done via mesh networking. So we'll talk about sort of what that is here. On the right, you see sort of how a regular cellular network would operate. Even if I was standing right next to Pablo, if I wanted to call him, it would have to go through a cell tower, which would have to be set up by someone, and then it would go to him. How a mesh topology works, you can imagine yourself in the middle there. All of the nodes, all of the end user devices in the mesh, all repeat each other's message on each other's behalf. So whether you're trying to contact somebody who's far away from you, who you may not have a direct connection to, or right next to you, the mesh attempts to ensure that you see the shortest path there. And what's nice is also just by participating, everybody is participating in routing everyone's messages. So, by default and sort of the recommended configuration is that everybody contributes just by having one of these devices and having this set up. Chris, go ahead.
I was going to maybe those people who don't have any clue about this, it doesn't. Some people might think, oh, everybody's going to see my message, so you might want to clarify when you say the message gets relayed for non-technical people, what that means. So.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. I'll cover that in a couple slides. Awesome. So, Meshtastic devices are, at the most basic level, a low-cost way to communicate with others at the event. And it does not provide internet connectivity, and it does not, by default, provide any type of connectivity outside of the Burn. It is an insulary network for people who are within that physical locale. We could talk about the edge pieces, which it can be connected to stuff outside the Burn. But by default, in its most basic configuration, it does not do that. It's only the people around you. So what does this look like in practice? Not just in practice, but what does this look like at Burning Man? So here we have a screenshot of sort of a map of everybody at my camp and also the camps that participated on my channel, which we'll talk about sort of the public versus private. But you can see where the locations of people are and where the locations of assets are, whether that's our cars or bicycles or whatever else you decide to onboard onto the network. And the most basic tenet is everybody or everything that you want to communicate with must have one of these Meshtastic devices. There's 2 types of devices. There's phone interface devices, which are small devices that are separate from your phone. Sorry, I'm just admitting people here in the waiting room. Small devices separate from your phone that connect to your phone via Bluetooth and allow your phone to communicate with the mesh just using your phone as an interface. So your phone connects to the mesh device. This is a large one that I'm using for testing. And then through that, when you send a message from your phone using this app, it will go to this device and then communicate with the mesh. And that goes the same for any other message type, whether that is location or weather data or information about battery or whatever else you want to push to the mesh. Then there are complete end user devices, and these are devices that would be as close to phone functionality as possible. So it's a device with its own screen and its own keyboard and its own battery and its own mesh radio built in. And those do exist. They're sort of in their infancy, but they do exist with some limited functionality. And I would say that the vast majority of people, and we'll talk about sort of our findings from last year, the vast majority of people used these devices on the right, which are sort of end user devices that then connect to your phone. There is an app that you interface with, and the app allows for basic, straightforward, and user-friendly messaging, group chat, and location sharing abilities. Very similar to what you would be used to in Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. The mesh is incredibly low bandwidth, so there is no like image sharing, voice clips, video, live audio streaming, anything. It's just purely very low bandwidth. Just for a frame of reference, the entirety of the Burning Man mainnet mesh last year, the combined effective bandwidth was about 20 kilobits per second. And that was for all roughly 750 devices, 750 people and devices that were participating on the public mesh. So it's very, very low bandwidth. And we'll talk about sort of the network operating models here. There's one thing that I think I missed in this presentation, or maybe I hit the button twice, or I didn't organize my things correctly, but we'll go back to it afterwards. We'll talk about network operating models. So there's the public mesh, which is a set of presets that our group, in conjunction with the Meshtastic organization, will publish as a custom firmware. And that is presets that are designed to facilitate large-scale communication. And as far as Meshtastic is concerned, Burning Man, 750 nodes, 1,000, 2,000 nodes is considered very large-scale for their default use case. So there will be a preset that will be published that will focus specifically on increasing the bandwidth, decreasing the amount of hops, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then there are private networks for large groups, maybe 20 or 30 people, maybe up to 100 people who have a mesh administrator in their camp and want to be able to have a controlled environment in order to deploy their own infrastructure and deploy their own mesh. So this was the rough, it ended up being about 1,100 unique. But let's say about 750 were on the public and 250 were on the private mesh. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, when you're just thinking, like we have a lot of time to plan as of right now for the burn, but which type of operating model is right for me? It's like, do I have a semi-critical use case? I would not use this for a life-saving use case, but a semi-critical use case and need very consistent connectivity. Am I a large group of 20 to 30 people where it would make sense for us to have our own because we would have enough people spread around the playa that routing would be easier? And do I have the resources, both in people power and, like money to deploy and build our own network? Then there's the other use case, which is the majority of use cases, which we're just 1 to 5 people. There is lots of nodes on this public channel to route through on your own, the ability to share location only with your friends, and the ability to have encrypted direct messages, as was mentioned before, and group chats while still utilizing a public mesh. For example, if I wanted to message Pablo, I wanted to send him a direct message. Although my message would be relayed over the mesh network through many, many people's devices, no one would be able to see that because now Meshtastic has implemented some type of encryption called PKI, which allows this type of communication to happen without any knowledge of intermediate parties. The same goes with group chats with a shared key. The same goes with your location and other metadata if you had a weather station or if you wanted to monitor the solar charge of your art piece in deep playa without going to check on it, or if you want to know where your art car or your bicycle was, you can set that up on the public mesh, but only you or a subset of you and your friends, you and people of your camp can see. All right. Then we'll talk about sort of what we have to do going forward, so our action items here as a group, and what I'm trying to organize, these community initiatives. We had some findings from last year, which we can talk about in Q&A. But one of those findings was that there were some routing issues on the public mesh that could have been alleviated by several very powerful, very high up nodes. So we'll need sort of a group of people to facilitate putting those up and ensuring that they're working. The organization of private channels is the second one. We did this last year. We had a spreadsheet of all of the camps that wanted to participate in all of the channels, and we distributed private channel numbers to all of them, or people self-chose, and we ensured there was no collisions. And we also facilitated maybe a 20-person camp and a 25-person camp getting together and sharing one private channel and helping each other out in sort of their mesh journey, and also expanding their network. And the deployment of documentation. The mesh project has leaped incredibly since this time last year with functionality, with hardware, and with feature sets. And all of the documentation that I wrote for last year, because I have quick start guides and recommended hardware, is basically completely obsolete. And that needs to be rewritten and deployed. So those are sort of the three main action items, and we can talk about that and sort of organize for those who would be interested in sort of helping me out doing all of this. And I'd like to announce that I'm going to launch a Discord. I'll post the link here in a second, where we can hopefully organize a little bit better. Right now we have a single private channel on the Burning Man Discord, and also a sub channel in the Meshtastic Discord, which has been great. But now with 1,000 nodes last year, God knows what it's going to be this year, but the year before it was 100. And now we're at 1,000. I would assume that maybe we're going to hit somewhere near 2,000 this upcoming year. I think we're going to need more than like one semi-committed person to sort of get this going, and having a Discord to sort of organize and communicate would be good. And there's a website, burningmesh.org, which I put up and I run, and that's where we would publish, where I published last year, YouTube tutorials for camp administrators, YouTube tutorial for individual user, and guides on recommended hardware and links on how to procure it. Cool. I know that was very abridged and brief, and did not go into too much detail about any specific thing, but I wanted to see sort of where the group was as far as their experience with Meshtastic, and where the need would be for additional documentation outside of what's already been provided, not only in this presentation, but in the documentation from the 2024 report, as well, the 2023 report, which I can link, which was a report I generated about the experience of using Meshtastic at Burning Man, as well as some of the documentation from last year. So if anybody has questions, you can feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat, and we can have sort of an open discussion. And in the meantime, I will get the invite link for the Discord, which I will also send in an email afterwards, and I will post it in this channel. And I'm sorry for the